Canada gets a lot of freebies from, but Prime Minister Carney wasn't grateful in his Davos speech. That has to change.
Trump talks. The word signs contracts. Canada didn't respond with anger, it responded with deals. Deals that bypass Washington, deals that reshape influence. If you think this is just political trash talk, think again. By the end of this video, the numbers will tell a very different story. Watch till the end. Canada doesn't live, it leads. Trump says Canada survives because of the United States. That without Washington, Canada would struggle to exist. It's a line meant to sound dominant, dismissive, and final. But when you step back from the rhetoric and look at the facts, the story flips fast. Canada isn't living off anyone. Canada is leading quietly, structurally, and globally. Start with power. Not political slogans, but real power. Canada is one of the world's most underestimated energy superpowers. It controls vast hydropower capacity, supplying clean, stable electricity not just at home but across borders. It sits on massive oil reserves, ranking among the top holders globally. It is also one of the world's leading producers of uranium, a critical fuel for nuclear energy and national security. These are not optional resources. These are foundations of modern economies, and the United States depends on them more than it likes to admit. Beyond energy, Canada sits at the center of key supply chains the US cannot easily replace. From critical minerals to agricultural exports to electricity flows into US states, Canadian infrastructure is woven directly into American stability. That isn't dependence, that's leverage. Now look east. One of the most revealing shifts isn't happening in Washington, but in New Delhi. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has quietly executed a major pivot, a significant diamond import deal with Canada. This isn't just another trade headline. It marks the first time India has turned to Canada at this scale for diamonds, a sector that sits at the intersection of finance, industry, and geopolitics. Diamonds are not just luxury items. They are high-value, portable assets tied to manufacturing, cutting, export markets, and strategic reserves. By choosing Canada, India is signaling trust, reliability, and long-term alignment. It is also signaling a move away from traditional suppliers and legacy routes that come with political risk. And that's where Washington feels the sting. Because this deal isn't about sparkle, it's about influence. Canada gaining deeper economic roots in Asia means the United States has less room to maneuver. It means Ottawa, not Washington, is becoming the preferred partner in certain strategic trades. Influence diluted doesn't vanish overnight, but it does erode. So ask the bigger question. Who do countries trust right now? Canada is seen as stable, predictable, and non-bullying. It doesn't threaten tariffs on a whim. It doesn't weaponize alliances publicly. It builds long-term agreements quietly and enforces them consistently. In a volatile world, that matters. Trade partners aren't choosing Canada by accident. They're choosing it because reliability beats volume and consistency beats noise. So if Canada is merely living, why is the world lining up at its door? This isn't chest-thumping nationalism. It's a measurable shift in global behavior. Capital, contracts, and confidence move toward countries that deliver without drama. Canada fits that profile today. Not louder, not flashier, just steadier. And in geopolitics, steady often wins when pressure rises and uncertainty punishes arrogance. Over time, those choices reshape power maps permanently. Globally, Trump's comment backfires. Canada's receipts go global one sentence. That's all it took. When Donald Trump claimed that Canada lives because of the United States, it was meant to project dominance, a reminder, in his view, of who holds the power. Instead, it triggered something else entirely, a global reality check, not just for Canada's critics, but for Washington itself. Because in today's world, statements like that don't land in a vacuum. They land in markets, boardrooms, foreign ministries, and trade capitals. And the response wasn't outrage alone. It was receipts. What Trump said matters not just because of the words, but because of the timing and tone. The comment came amid rising trade tensions, renewed tariff threats, and political pressure at home. It sounded less like confidence and more like frustration. And for allies listening closely, it raised a question. If Canada is supposedly dependent, why is it acting so independently on the global stage? Look at Canada's trade reality in 2026, and the picture is clear. Yes, the United States remains a major partner, but it is no longer the only pillar. Over the past decade, Canada has aggressively diversified its trade relationships, strong agreements with Europe through CETA, expanding energy and mineral partnerships in Asia, deepening ties with Indo-Pacific economies. Canada has been quietly future-proofing its economy while Washington stayed loud. And then came India. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has made one of its most strategic trade moves yet, a major diamond deal with Canada. This isn't symbolic, it's structural. Canada holds significant diamond reserves, particularly in its northern territories, known for ethical sourcing and political stability. India, meanwhile, is the world's diamond polishing and export powerhouse, controlling the majority of global cutting and processing. Put those two together and you get a clean, efficient, high-trust supply chain. A win for Canada's resource sector, a win for India's manufacturing and exports, and notably, a deal that doesn't require the United States as a gatekeeper. That's the part that stings. For decades, the US positioned itself as the center of gravity in global trade flows, especially among allies. Deals passed through Washington one way or another. But this Canada-India alignment shows a different model, direct partnerships based on reliability, not pressure, predictability, not posturing. Trump's unhappiness isn't about wounded pride, it's about lost leverage. Every deal Canada signs independently chips away at the idea that it needs American approval to thrive. Every successful partnership outside US influence rewrites the narrative Trump is trying to sell. And the irony is sharp. The comment meant to belittle Canada instead highlighted Washington's anxiety. Because confident powers don't need to remind others who's in charge. They let results speak. This wasn't an insult to Canada. It was an admission of fear. Fear that influence is shifting. Fear that allies have options. Fear that quiet competence is beating loud dominance. And in geopolitics, fear often speaks before decline becomes visible. Trump mocked Canada, brushed it off as a country that lives because of the United States. The comment was meant to diminish, to remind Ottawa of its place. But politics has a way of exposing timing, because just days later, Canada didn't respond with outrage or press conferences. It responded with something far more effective, a global deal that shifted the balance. Canada's advantage has never been volume or volume-driven bravado. It's been resources, stability, and trust. The country sits on a deep well of natural wealth that the modern world can't function without. Diamonds sourced from Canada are prized not just for quality, but for being clean, traceable, and conflict-free. In an era where ethical sourcing matters to governments and corporations alike, that distinction carries weight. Energy tells the same story. Canada's hydropower, oil reserves, and critical minerals underpin everything from electric grids to advanced manufacturing. These are inputs that don't make headlines until they're missing. And Canada controls them quietly, with infrastructure already in place and contracts that last decades. That's why India's move matters. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has been laser-focused on supply security. The goal is simple: reduce exposure to unstable regions, political shocks, and opaque supply chains. Canada offered the opposite: predictable governance, transparent regulation, long-term reliability. By choosing Canada over riskier suppliers, India wasn't just making a purchase, it was making a statement. This partnership signals trust, not short-term convenience, but long-term alignment. It tells the market that Canada is a safe anchor in a turbulent global economy. And that kind of trust can't be demanded. It has to be earned over years. Meanwhile, the United States watched from the sidelines. There was no veto power, no leverage to apply, no back-channel pressure that could stop it. The deal didn't require American approval, financing, or oversight. It moved forward without Washington at the center, and that alone marks a shift. Zoom out, and the pattern becomes clearer. Middle powers are reshaping global trade. Countries that aren't superpowers but also aren't dependent are building direct links with one another. They're reducing friction, bypassing traditional gatekeepers, and diversifying risk. The US is still influential, but it's no longer the automatic hub for every major deal. Canada understood that moment. So when Trump mocked, Canada didn't clap back, it didn't tweet, it didn't escalate. Canada didn't respond with words, it responded with deals. When Trump said Canada survives because of America, the message was meant to assert control, a reminder of hierarchy. But the reality unfolding right now tells a different story. Canada isn't clinging to the US, it's steadily decoupling from over reliance on it. And that shift is deliberate. For decades, Canada's economy was deeply tied to the American market. Geography made it efficient, history made it comfortable. But comfort can turn into vulnerability. Ottawa understood that early. Over the last several years, Canada has been reducing its exposure by diversifying trade routes and partners. Europe through comprehensive trade agreements, Asia through targeted resource and manufacturing deals. The strategy is simple. No single country should hold the switch. That's where the Indo-Pacific comes in. Asia-focused trade routes are no longer a future plan. They're operational. Canada is positioning itself as a reliable supplier of resources that Asia needs and a stable partner governments can trust. This isn't about replacing the US. It's about balance. And balance is power. Nowhere is this clearer than in Canada's growing alignment with India. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has been rethinking its supply chains with security at the center. Diamonds are a perfect case study. Canada has emerged as a key source, offering ethically sourced, conflict-free diamonds under a transparent legal system. India, the world's diamond cutting and export hub, gains supply stability. Canada gains deeper access to Asia's fastest-growing economy. But beyond economics, this is diplomacy through trade. It signals political alignment, shared interest in predictable rules, mutual respect for sovereignty, long-term thinking over short-term leverage. And that's exactly why it undermines US influence. Trade isn't just commerce, it's power. Whoever controls supply routes, contracts, and dependencies shapes outcomes by proving it can bypass Washington and still secure high-value partnerships. Canada is demonstrating economic independence in real time. No American mediation, no approval required, just direct engagement. This doesn't mean the US is irrelevant. It means it's no longer unavoidable. Canada also benefits from something harder to manufacture: reputation. It's seen as a stable democracy, a country that honors agreements, one that doesn't threaten tariffs on social media or weaponize trade during political cycles. In a volatile global environment, that image is currency. So when Trump claims Canada lives because of the US, it sounds less like fact and more like nostalgia. Canada doesn't live because of the United States. It thrives despite US pressure. Trump talks. The world signs contracts. That contrast has never been clearer. While political rhetoric dominates headlines, global markets are moving in a different direction. And increasingly, they're moving toward Canada. Start with what Canada holds that the United States actively needs. Energy is the obvious one. Canadian oil, hydropower, and electricity exports are deeply embedded in US infrastructure. Add critical minerals, essential for batteries, defense systems, and advanced manufacturing, and the picture sharpens. These aren't optional inputs, they are strategic assets. On top of that, Canada offers something many suppliers cannot: clean, transparent, and rules-based supply chains. In a world anxious about ethics, sanctions, and instability, that combination is powerful. Then came the turning point. India's diamond deal with Canada wasn't just large, it was historic. It marked a shift in how India views long term resource partnerships. For the first time at this scale, Canada entered India's economic planning as a core supplier. Canada brings ethically sourced diamonds under a stable legal framework. India brings unmatched cutting, polishing, and export capacity. Together, they create a direct pipeline that bypasses traditional middlemen and geopolitical friction. And this isn't a one off, it's a signal. Resource agreements tend to cluster. Once trust is established, energy, minerals, and infrastructure follow. Canada isn't just selling diamonds to India, it's entering India's long term economic vision at a structural level. So, why does Trump react emotionally? Because what's being lost isn't just a deal, it's dominance. For decades, the US shaped the narrative. Allies needed access to American markets, American approval, American systems. That role is fading. Canada proving it can secure major partnerships independently undercuts that story. It shows that influence can flow around Washington, not always through it. It also represents a loss of control. When trade relationships no longer require US mediation, leverage disappears. And when leverage disappears, rhetoric gets louder. Canada's response has been telling. No retaliation, no insults, no public sparring, just results. While words escalate, Canada signs agreements. While threats circulate, Canada builds supply chains. While narratives are defended, Canada lets data speak. That restraint isn't weakness, it's confidence. So when Trump says Canada lives because of America, it makes for a sharp soundbite. But the numbers tell a different story. America benefits because of Canada.